Hi guys, hope everyone's well and welcome back to the education section. So today I'm going to be going over when to transition splits. Basically what I mean by split is what kind of training program you're on. So basically your splits, what movements you do in a session, how often you do those sessions and how often they repeat would, what I'd say, make up your training split. And throughout your fitness journey, what split is applicable or best for yourself will often change. The split that you might get the best progress out of or might work the best for yourself or might even just suit your day-to-day routine, day-to-day life best, might not be the split that suits yourself 5 years down the road, just due to your many factors really. And regardless of where you are in your fitness journey, in terms of how experienced you are, it could just be due to your lifestyle. It could be due to your work commitments changing. So this video is going to talk through basically what split's best for yourself and why you may want to adjust your split if necessary. So start off, what split should you start on? So what split you should start on will be dependent on many factors, like enjoyment, what equipment you have available, and time commitments, and many more variables. However, on paper, if I had to kind of recommend what split's best to start on, or what split I'd potentially recommend starting on if you're a beginner, or if a client came to me, for example, and regardless of maybe what they enjoy best or adherence or their work commitments, I'd ideally recommend usually an upper-lower, then a rest split, and basically repeating that process. And the reason being is that allows you to stimulate muscle growth effectively for every single body part. What I mean by that is, if let's say someone trained maybe just chest in one session once a week, in comparison to doing upper-lower rest, upper-lower rest, upper, and that would be how much they'd be training basically their upper body 3 times in that 1 week. The reason why I think that's more beneficial is because if we can stimulate a muscle group to grow, it can recover, rebuild new tissue, we can basically train it again, recover, build new tissue, and train it again in a week, then we're getting 3 times opportunities to build muscle tissue in that region. We've got 3 times the amount of opportunities to progress our lifts, recover, progress our lifts again, recover, and progress our lifts. And the reason why this is so beneficial is if you think about it over like a large space of time, let's say a year, if let's say you train chest once a week, you'd be stimulating muscle growth, progressing your lifts 52 times. If you train chest 3 times a week, then you'd get 156 opportunities to basically build muscle in that region. Testing my maths there. So basically it allows you to stimulate muscle growth more frequently. And when you're starting out, you don't really need that high level of attention to one muscle group. You don't need to do a ton of sets for the one muscle group. What I mean by that is you don't need to go in and do chest and do 6 different exercises for your chest. Going in and training your chest and just doing 2 to 4 sets, if you're training at adequate level of effort, could be enough, especially if you're training chest 3 times that week, for example, in an upper-lower split. And in a real-life scenario, something to consider is people like routine. Some people may thrive off a bit more routine and they might prefer their split to rotate around a 7-day rotation. What I mean by that is, if you do upper-lower rest, what it'll end up is one Monday it'll be upper, next Monday it'll be lower, next Monday after that it'll be a rest day. So the split constantly changes as you move throughout the weeks, which can be bad for some individuals. For example, if someone's got a work schedule that they work very, very long hours, that they've got a lot of commitments outside the work, and they've got days maybe they just can't train, then that's probably not going to work out for them. So what that individual could do in that scenario is, if they prefer everything staying on the one day, they can just add it in an arms and delts session, so an arm and shoulder day after the lower body session. And that's going to allow them to stay on that 7-day rotation so that they don't need to kind of change their movements every single time they go through the space of a week. And like I said, this allows 2 to 3 like kind of day or 2 to 3 a week training frequency for every single body part. And literature supports this. Literature basically supports that you can get more progress from like a 2 to 3 times a week training frequency rather than just training a muscle group 1 times a week. And in terms of like an upper lower split, this episode I'm not going to kind of I'm not going to touch on how to structure it. This is more so basically talking about what split I like starting on and when to transition. So when you should transition your split is when you feel like this much big sessions become unsustainable, in my opinion. What I mean by that is if you are doing an upper lower split, if you go into upper body, how I'd structure upper body would be usually like 2 big pressing compounds, 2 big pull compounds, sometimes even 3 press compounds, and then a side delt variation, and then some arm work. And it gets to a point when you get to a certain level of strength that if you've got 4 big compound movements, you're a bit spent from doing that. That's a lot of work. Like if you're doing like a bent over row, like a lat pull down, a chest press and a shoulder press, for example, that's a lot of fatiguing work to do per session. And then you've got to go in the next day and do legs. So basically, if you get to the level of strength where your rest periods, obviously, or the amount of warm-ups you need to get to your top set weight, your working set weight gets really high, that your sessions get drawn out quite long from that. They also get drawn out from the amount of rest periods you need throughout your sets. Additionally, you just feel like throughout the session, your kind of physical and mental focus dwindles, it just worsens, and it should worsen throughout a session. You're not going to be super fresh towards the very later half of the session, but it does so excessively, then that can be a reason to move split. And from fatigue carrying on from previous sessions getting too high, meaning doing upper and then going into a lower session and training all the muscles in your lower body, that's going to be quite fatiguing. And just the overall session length, like if you're doing, like I said, that upper body day, and the amount of compound movements, warming up and getting through them all, the stronger you get, the longer that's going to take. And also, smaller body parts get neglected from, let's say, doing those 4 big movements, you're absolutely spent. By the time you get to maybe your side delt work, your arm work, the quality can diminish. Whereas if you're on like a push-pull leg split, the quality can stay higher as you're not having to do as much big fatiguing movements per session. And also, potentially needing more volume per body part. The reason I say potentially is more volume's not always better. Sometimes as you progress, you can even get away with doing less volume as the quality of your work can increase due to being able to execute more effectively by being able to put more effort into your sets. So although when you're starting out, you don't need a lot of work to grow just because it's so new to you that you get like newbie gains from it. At the same time, as you get through your training career, your ability to get more out of one set improves. So it's not linear. Like when you kind of get more experience, you don't need to do more work. However, there's a difference here between what I've just touched on being unsustainable and just difficult. Your sessions are supposed to be hard. Your sessions are supposed to be difficult. So there's a difference between, like, if you're still progressing, if your lifts are still going up consistently, then you might not need to change splits. But if you're finding like you're really not being able to progress your sessions, you're deloading super frequently and you're just absolutely smashed from it, and your physique's maybe not getting developed as you'd like due to maybe your arms not growing very well, due to being tagged on at the end and your side delts, etc. Like I said, then that's when you could maybe consider it. And the session length becoming like really long. For many people, I think they don't reach the point where they need to move to an additional training split. They don't exhaust this beginner training split, and they just kind of swap it. Instead of it not being effective, they swap it due to a bit of boredom, and they just want to try something new. So they're kind of prioritising kind of enjoyment and novelty over results, which is fine, but it's just good to kind of realise why you're doing that. And I ran this split for the best part of 2 years plus when I started with my coach. This is after kind of obviously training for a good period before that as well. So like you shouldn't need to kind of start training and then change your split after 6 months. You want to stay on it for as long as basically you can without any negative effects. And be honest, are you actually getting any negative side effects from running the split? So what split should you transition to next? So typically I'd move to a push-pull leg split. This allows you to give smaller body parts more attention. So instead of doing a lot of maybe big fatiguing movements per session, during push, for example, you've got more time to dedicate towards training your triceps and doing isolation movements for them. If you want more time to dedicate towards training your side delts and maybe some isolation movements for your chest if necessary. So allow you to give the smaller body parts more attention that you can't really do in an upper-lower session. But you don't really need to do an upper-lower session for a beginner, because you don't need to kind of get bigger side delts and like chest and upper chest. You just need more muscle everywhere. So it's fine if you don't get that attention on an upper-lower split. But eventually you'll need it. Thanks very much for watching. The full video is available for my online coaching clients in the Coach by Charlie education section. If you're interested in online coaching, then feel free to apply via the link in the description. If you did enjoy the video, please like, subscribe and ring the notification bell for my future videos. Thanks very much for watching.